Multiplayer games are hard. When I first started my indie game, I already spent about 3 months in it expecting to just add in multiplayer support like a plugin. I was really wrong. Making a multiplayer game, it means fundamentally designing your entire game around the idea of sending and receiving data. I thought multiplayer games have been around forever. There must be some super established or great solution already. Well, there isn't. I literally was stunned at how hard it was to get even two cameras to work at the same time, which is like step zero in making a video game. And that's when I realized the reason there aren't many indie games is because of how hard it is. Another thing people don't tell you is that there are like no resources for multiplayer games. You try and look up a Python or a C# tutorial and you'll find them everywhere. You look up a multiplayer coding tutorial and there's almost nothing. And the ones that do exist are either old, for a different game engine, or insanely complicated. As a result, multiplayer is mainly dominated by massive AAA studios and live service games, where there's literal teams dedicated to the netcode. And the people on these teams have been making multiplayer games for decades. Video game dev is a niche field already, and multiplayer coding is a sub-niche of an existing niche. And truthfully, the demand to learn like netcode isn't really there. Now, there's a few networking solutions to choose from if you decide to make a game. Unreal has built-in networking solutions, but Unreal itself isn't very friendly to solo devs or beginners. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's definitely a lot harder, and for my game, I didn't really need the insane graphics quality. Godot has built-in networking solutions, but it needs some work. It's not as flexible or optimized as I would like, and don't get me wrong, I love open source and I love the work they're doing. I just think it requires some more development before I would use it personally. And that's when I stumbled on Unity. Unity does have a built-in networking solution, but you probably shouldn't use it. There are a few other libraries, such as Mirror, but the best by far is Fishnet. Now, this isn't a paid promotion, and I'm not affiliated with them. It's just my personal favorite. But even with, in my opinion, the best networking library on the market, it is still unreasonably difficult to make a multiplayer game. Which brings me to my next reason there aren't many multiplayer games, and that's latency. Latency is genuinely the worst, and arguably the most difficult part of multiplayer coding. Sending data and syncing objects across the network is hard enough, but latency makes it so much harder. Because if you're connecting to your friend's Minecraft server, the time it takes your data to reach his computer is different from the time it takes his data to reach his computer. And as a result, this will cause desyncs, such as an enemy being in different spots on two different computers. So you have to account for this. This also includes optimizing the data you send so you don't send more data than you need to. You also should send data that can be inferred, which saves bandwidth. This is why a lot of games use an ID system, because it's much cheaper to send the ID of a projectile instead of the projectile data itself. This just adds another layer of complexity on top of the hurdles you have to jump through to make a game networked. Overall, the reason why there aren't more multiplayer indie games is because it's just really hard. But that shouldn't stop you, and it's certainly not going to stop me. If you enjoyed this video, I'll be posting more about multiplayer content, including more tutorial content, as well as my indie game in the future.